After my boyfriend passed away, I fell into severe depression. When I was ready to give up on life, he, of all people, the most reckless one, saved me. He put away all his wildness and stayed by my side for 5 years, helping me out of that dark place. But just before our 1-year anniversary, I found his diagnosis: terminal cancer. When I went to confront him, I overheard him talking to his friend. "Flora never let me touch her, I feel like I'm just a stand-in. If she'd give up her life for me, then I'd believe she's truly moved on from her past. So what's wrong with faking my death to test her?" So, I faked my death first, right in front of him. Later, I heard he went mad, jumped into the sea, nearly lost his life, but never found the girlfriend who died for him. For the past month, Jasper's been distant with me. I grabbed my car keys, ready to ask him why. As I reached out, I accidentally knocked over the little bottle of stars on the entryway table. A piece of paper fell out: Jasper's terminal cancer diagnosis. I rubbed my eyes, unable to believe it. Jasper, 28, late-stage liver cancer. The words blurred together, leaving me dizzy and gasping for breath. So, he was being cold to break up with me, to spare me the burden. In my overwhelming sadness, all I wanted was to see him. I was ready to tell him I'd stay with him through treatment, no matter what, just like he stood by me for those 5 years. But when I found him, I overheard his frustration. "Flora hasn't let me touch her all these years, I still feel like a replacement." I pulled back my hand that was about to knock on the door and watched as he took a long drag from his cigarette, his face full of irritation. The dead first love always has the upper hand. I don't believe Flora has truly forgotten him. But I've wasted 6 years on her. He didn't look like someone who was sick. One drag of the cigarette after another. Someone joked, "Jasper, seriously? It's the 21st century, and you're still playing at platonic love? You know what they say, you can't compete with the dead. Especially when she nearly died for that guy." Jasper's face remained cold and silent. Other friends chimed in, "Yeah, with someone like that, just have some fun. You're not seriously committed, right? You don't get it. Jasper's been with Flora for 5 years. He quit all his extreme sports, acted like an obedient puppy. He's put so much into this, of course, he's not ready to let go." Jasper stubbed out his cigarette, frowning even more deeply. "She has depression. I'm afraid she'll worry." After a pause, he looked up. "Do you think her depression is just an act?" Suddenly, a cold chill ran up from my feet, enveloping my whole body. "Who knows? I think the real reason she doesn't let you touch her is that she still hasn't gotten over her ex, so she won't fully accept you." Jasper's face was expressionless, but the air around him felt icy. Sensing the awkward tension, someone tried to comfort him. "Honestly, don't take it to heart. The guy she loved is long dead, so he's no threat to you." "Is that so?" Jasper's eyes were devoid of warmth. "I just want to see if Flora truly loves me." "What do you mean by that?" someone asked. The lights dimmed, hiding Jasper's face in shadows. But I heard his voice clearly, filled with bitterness. "So, I'm thinking of faking my death to test her love, see if she'd give up her life for me too." Standing by the door with a cup of honey water, I heard everything he said. But my legs felt like they were filled with lead, too heavy to move. So, Jasper always thought I was using him as a substitute. He wanted to peel open my scars to see if I'd die for him. My heart felt strangled, twisted tight like vines, aching with every pull. I suddenly remembered that day when I was about to jump into the sea, and he pulled me back. He didn't tell me to move on, like everyone else did. He told me, "If you can't let go, just keep it deep in your heart. Forgetting isn't a requirement for embracing a new life. As long as you get through each day, you'll eventually reach the end you want." Since then, he stayed in my life. Even when I ignored him, he was willing to stay by my side. Then, one day, a ray of sunlight fell on the blanket. I reached out to touch the sunlight, and slowly, the knots in my heart began to untangle. That was the 3rd year we knew each other. After that, we went through a lot together. His dedication and persistence slowly helped me open up to him. By the 5th year, before I accepted his confession, I visited Finn's grave and told him I was moving on, that I wouldn't come back. But now I see, Jasper never truly believed me. Someone handed him a drink. Honestly, this whole thing seems risky. What if she finds out? What's your plan if she does? And if she relapses, you'll have to help her recover again. Are you really that free? And if she really does die for you, and you can't save her in time, won't you feel guilty? Of course I would. Jasper took a slow sip, a smile tugging at his lips. But don't worry, if it proves her love, I doubt Flora would hold any grudges. After a pause, he added, besides, once everyone knows she loved me enough to die for me, who else would want her? She'd be stuck with me. Pressing his lips together, he gave a small smile. Even if I couldn't save her, I'd remember her for the rest of my life. I stood outside, as if drenched in ice water, trembling all over. My heart felt frozen solid. His words hit me like blow after blow, making me clutch the wall just to stay standing. So, it wasn't terminal cancer. It was all just a test. He didn't care if my depression would come back or if I'd actually die. In fact, maybe he thought that if I did die, it would be even better. That way, he'd finally win against my dead boyfriend. Desperation surged through my veins, and a plan quietly formed in my mind. Jasper, let's see who truly can't live without the other. You want to see my depression relapse? You want to fake your death to test me? I'll give you what you want. I'll pretend to go along with the treatment. I'll pretend to be tormented by depression again. And then, I'll fake my death, right in front of you. Let you witness it. Let your plan fail. Let you never find me again. I can't wait to see the look on your face that day. I turned and went home, staring at the forged terminal diagnosis. The date was from a month ago. This wasn't a sudden decision, it was part of Jasper's plan all along. My nose stung, and tears began to fall uncontrollably. He was the one who said we wouldn't be intimate before marriage. He was the one who tightly held my hand and promised to save the best memories for our wedding day. We hadn't even been together for a year. I always thought it would just happen naturally, never imagining we had to wait for some specific day. If he really wanted it, I wouldn't have said no. But from Jasper's mouth, it turned into me being unable to let go of someone else, using that as an excuse not to accept him. How laughable. To him, being with me was a burden, a waste of time. Why didn't he tell me earlier? 6 years. Not 6 days. If he had told me sooner, I wouldn't have clung on, I would have moved on with my life. Instead of now, after I've given him my heart, being played like a fool after a year together. I pinched the skin between my thumb and forefinger hard. Thank God. Thank God I found out in time before I fell back into depression. Now I understand, men's love for you always comes with strings attached and conditions. When Jasper came back, I was still sitting on the sofa, lost in thought. Click. The light suddenly came on. The brightness made me instinctively close my eyes. He seemed surprised to see I was still awake. Flora, he called in shock. I opened my eyes to look at him, still clutching that report in my hand. He froze for a moment, then quickly walked over to me. My voice trembled as I asked, "Is it true?" And then, the tears fell. He pressed his lips together, reaching out to wipe my tears. He looked heartbroken. Don't cry, I'm fine. Maybe he didn't dare to meet my eyes. He held me, rubbing his face against my neck. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are just part of life, Flora. I'm so grateful to have met you these past years. Honestly, I have no regrets. Please, don't be sad, okay? I don't want your illness to relapse. See? The one who cares about me is him. But the one who tests me, wanting to see if I'll give up my life for him, is also him. Jasper, which of your words are true? I recalled that scene at the bar when he mocked me in front of others, showing his indifference. Then, memories of the past years flooded in, his tender care, his vows of eternal love. He seemed so genuine. Countless images intertwined, splitting Jasper into different faces. My head felt like it was being pounded with heavy blows. Each hit made it harder to breathe, and my whole body trembled and grew cold. Doesn't he know whether he loves me or not? Why does he have to treat me like this? For a moment, logic whispered to me, this is it, just end it with him now. Walk away with your dignity. But he held my face and asked, Flora, what's wrong? Why are you shaking? Is your illness flaring up again? Isn't this what you wanted to see? Why pretend? So I pulled away from his embrace, looking at him with a hoarse voice. Jasper, your cancer is fake, isn't it? I had no idea what he was thinking at that moment. Maybe he was considering just coming clean now that his lie was exposed, admitting his dissatisfaction. Or maybe he'd pretend not to understand, take the diagnosis away, and treat this as our breakup. But what I was thinking was, let's stop it here. Let's set each other free. But after a long silence, Jasper's eyes reddened as he looked at me. Flora, as soon as I got diagnosed, I wanted to break up with you. I was really afraid I'd drag you down. So I've been forcing myself to distance from you this month. I thought you wouldn't notice, and I'd just quietly die on my own. Liar. If you didn't want me to find out, why would you leave the diagnosis at my place? But I can't let you go. When I don't see you, I go crazy. This whole month, I've been tortured by both illness and longing, unable to bear the pain. All I can think about is you, so I came. Forgive my selfishness, but even in my final moments, I want you by my side. I slowly closed my eyes. You still want to continue your act, Jasper. Flora, are you okay? Do you need some medicine? How could someone show so much concern while doing something so hurtful? I clenched my palm hard, trying to suppress the knot in my heart. Then I reached out to hold him. Jasper, I'll stay with you and help you through the treatment. You'll get better. If you leave, I'll leave this world with you. For a split second, I felt the tension in his back. But in the end, he said nothing. Jasper, let's play this game. Let's see who wins in the end. Jasper checked into the private hospital he had already arranged. Standing outside the room, I watched a group of people gather around him, laughing and joking, without a hint of sadness. At the front was a strikingly beautiful girl who lightly punched his chest. So, can you still go racing with me? Jasper chuckled. What are girls doing racing? You better be careful, or no one will want to marry you. The girl pouted adorably. Humph, didn't you promise me that if neither of us is married by 30, we'd marry each other? Jasper pinched her cheek with a doting smile. Don't waste your time on me. I have a girlfriend. The girl sneered. Oh, the one whose boyfriend died, she tried to die for him, and you saved her? The one you're so willing to change for. I'm really curious to see what she looks like. Jasper pressed his lips together. She's been through a lot. The girl shrugged. I think you're the pitiful one. Why would you pick someone like that? If you had said yes to my confession, we'd be married by now. Jasper lowered his eyes, not refuting her. I composed myself and knocked on the door. The chatter stopped instantly, and all eyes turned to the door. As I walked in, Jasper, dressed in hospital clothes, covered his chest and pretended to cough a few times. Flora. He reached out, wanting to hold my hand. I placed the soup I brought on the table, not taking his hand. I made some soup to nourish you. What did the doctor say? Everyone in the room looked at me with an air of amusement. As if they were all just watching the show, and I was playing along in their childish game. They said I need chemotherapy. If it's caught early, maybe there's still a chance. The whole time I was there, the girl's eyes never left me. Jasper introduced, Flora, this is Stella, a friend we grew up with. He deliberately emphasized the word friend. I gave her a brief nod. Hello. She stared at me provocatively, then reached out and opened the bowl of soup. I haven't eaten yet. I'm starving. You don't mind if I have some, do you? Jasper cut her off. I'm the patient here. Why are you drinking my soup? Why are you so stingy? I'll drink it if I want to. She then took a spoon and started drinking. I watched her quietly. Does it taste good? It's just takeout. She was probably trying to show me up. She quickly tossed the spoon aside and looked at Jasper. I drank it, so you shouldn't. Then she turned to me, her smile full of disdain. He was perfectly fine before you came along. Now, not only has he given up all his extreme sports, but he's even so careful about his life and gets cancer? Are you here to take his life? Jasper frowned. Stella, stop spouting nonsense. If you don't want to be here, go back home. You're scolding me again. Stella stood up, pouting playfully. Jasper, I tried to be kind, but you don't appreciate it. With a girlfriend like her, you deserve this. She glared at him, then slammed the door shut on her way out. The rest of the people quickly made their exits too. Jasper looked at the door, rubbing his temples. She's just childish. Don't take it to heart. It's fine. I lowered my eyes, pouring him some water. Jasper pulled my hand closer to his lips, drinking from the cup as he held on to me. He raised his eyebrows. Not in a good mood? Jealous? No. I withdrew my hand and placed the cup back. But he pulled me into his arms again. Flora, Stella's been with us since we were kids. She's straightforward. Don't mind her. He sounded so sincere. Like there really was nothing between them. But on his still-lit phone screen, I saw what he had saved Stella's name as, my little princess. And right after Stella had stormed out, she texted him, I don't care. You have to come racing with me tonight. But that's okay. I had just registered a new account on social media, starting to document my boyfriend's journey with cancer. Day 1 of liver cancer treatment. They say once this disease is discovered, there's no saving it. But he's so young. Why is life so unfair to him? I really wish I was the one with this disease. Attached was a photo of Jasper in his hospital gown, his face out of frame. I spent the whole day with him at the hospital. As the clock struck 6 p.m., his phone started buzzing incessantly. I was sitting beside him, drawing. I was drawing him. As I finished the last stroke, Jasper finally spoke up, Flora, you've been with me all day. You must be tired. Go home and rest. I put away my tablet and smiled, I'm not tired. He held my hand, I'm worried you're overexerting yourself. I'm fine. Jasper's face showed a trace of agitation. He didn't even notice that his grip on my hand had tightened, his fingertips turning white. I pretended not to notice and handed the drawing to him. Look, what do you think? Does it look like you? Normally, he'd give me some feedback. But today, as messages kept popping up on his phone, he glanced at my drawing and said half-heartedly, Flora's drawings are always the best. Yet, his eyes quickly shifted away. I silently counted in my head. 1, 2. By the time I reached 3, he cupped my face, Flora, you should head home. I've already hired a nurse. Fighting cancer is a long battle, don't exhaust yourself on the first day. You want me to leave early so you can go on a date, don't you? I nodded, all right, I'll go home. You rest up, and if you feel unwell, just call me. I'll get a driver to take you. He hurriedly grabbed his phone. The urgency in his eyes was almost overflowing. I shook my head, no need, I can go by myself. After closing the door, I saw Jasper quickly take off his hospital gown. When he came out, he was already fully dressed. I followed him secretly, trailing him to a winding road on the outskirts of the city. When he got out of the car, Stella ran towards him, screaming, and jumped into his arms. He caught her firmly and wrapped his arms tightly around her waist. A group of friends nearby whistled. They laughed freely, full of life and joy. But my heart felt like it was being sliced into pieces, tortured by 1,000 cuts. I pressed the shutter button on my camera and turned to leave. For the next while, Jasper kept coming up with excuses to go out. I watched as she sat behind him on his motorcycle, her arms wrapped tightly around his waist, her hand playfully waving in the wind. I saw them go rock climbing together, with him attentively watching her from behind, supporting her every step. I watched them go clubbing, him holding her close, while she smiled happily in his embrace. I also saw them having fun at the amusement park, taking countless photos. And then, under a sky filled with fireworks, they couldn't help but kiss. It felt like a thick rope was wrapping around my heart, tightening, suffocating me with every breath. Every time he would send me away, and then text me, Flora, thank you for staying by my side. I really love you. But time and again, as he told me he loved me, his soul was being stolen by another girl. It all started because of comparison. That girl who used to chase after him suddenly stopped. She left him. Then, he began to miss her. One day, she came back, still loving him intensely. And so, he regretted it. I couldn't understand. If he really loved someone else, he could have just broken up with me. Why keep up this act, making me feel like I should sacrifice everything for him? Was it really just his unwillingness to let go? Jasper, you really want it all, don't you? I posted about my daily life fighting cancer on my account. The day they kissed, I posted a photo of the jar filled with paper stars. He folded these stars for me over the 5 years we fought my depression. I loved the person he was back then, forever young, forever passionate. That night, as I followed him, I suddenly felt it wasn't worth it anymore. I stood across the road, quietly watching his back. I was still holding that jar of stars, each one hiding a blessing Jasper had written for me. I truly believed I'd have a new life, that I'd walk towards a happy ending with him. The night I broke off all ties with my parents, they pointed at Jasper and said, "A playboy like him has no future." They said our family was well regarded in intellectual circles and wouldn't allow their daughter to be with the son of a mistress. I questioned them. After they divorced when I was 5, they never cared about me. Even when I sank into depression after my grandmother passed, they didn't visit. But now, when someone has been by my side, giving me their whole heart for 5 years and I'm ready to accept them, they want to meddle in my life. On what grounds? They were just afraid I'd tarnish their reputation. They'd always been selfish, only loving themselves. That night, I cried hysterically. Jasper stood beside me, too afraid to touch or hold me. He said he had no reason, no right. He said it would harm my reputation. But then he confessed to me, saying, "Don't feel burdened. Love is never a burden. I love you, and that's enough. Whether or not you accept me is entirely up to you. I only want you to be happy." That day, I cried in his arms. He gently held me, his tears flowing down my neck, his voice trembling with emotion. "We've been through so much together. We must see it through to the end, right? Flora, I love you." I want to shout it to the whole world. But the person who once tearfully made those promises, the one who used to be so gentle and supportive, how could he change so suddenly? As I put my phone away, I suddenly heard a car horn blare. Blinding headlights shone in my face, and I raised my hand to shield my eyes. But then, someone suddenly pushed me out of the way. I turned and saw Jasper lying on the ground. Blood stained his face red. In an instant, the sound of screams, honking, and shouting filled my ears, making me dizzy. The person on the ground weakly called my name, Flora. I snapped back to reality and crawled over to Jasper. He grabbed my hand and gave me a faint smile. "Flora, I was going to die soon anyway. I'm just glad you're okay." At that moment, it felt like something was tugging at my heart. I clenched my fists tightly. Jasper, who do you truly love? I didn't know why he came back after leaving. Luckily, the out-of-control car stopped in time, and Jasper only suffered a head injury. He was fine. Back in the familiar hospital room, I sat by his side, watching over him. He still had the strength to talk. "Where were you going with that jar of stars?" I glanced at the jar on the table and brought it to him. He opened one of the stars. Inside was a quote from Tagore. "One morning, I threw away everything from yesterday, and from then on, my steps became light." After reading it, he smiled. "I used to write you a quote every day. You don't know this, but I worked harder finding famous quotes than I did studying for exams." I looked at his face and asked, "Jasper, why did you fall for me? Why ask that all of a sudden?" He ruffled my hair, seemingly lost in thought. "It was love at first sight for me, really. And as I got to know you, I found you to be gentle, beautiful, kind, and generous. You're well-educated, talented at drawing, and caring towards animals. You approach everything with such dedication. Being with you makes me think of peace and contentment. So I'm perfect, and it's not my fault." I asked again, "What about Stella?" His smile froze, and after a moment, he grabbed my hand and finally replied, "She's just a kid. We're not from the same world." An answer that didn't answer anything is still an answer. I smiled. Jasper, after all this time in treatment, why haven't your parents come to see you? I quietly watched his expression. Then I continued, Jasper, you once told me you'd never lie to me. His grip tightened, and he pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. You know about my family. So, Flora, you're all I have. Promise me, stay by my side, okay? And then, he'd use his vulnerability to trigger a relapse of my depression. Play the victim to make me pity him, and in the end, fake his death to test my sincerity. Right? His phone buzzed non-stop beside his pillow. The latest message popped up, Jasper, you jerk. How dare you bail on me? And just like that, whatever fleeting sympathy I'd felt for him when he saved me vanished. I posted on my account again. My boyfriend seems to be sneaking off to race. He's been in great spirits. Does this mean he's actually going to get better? Attached was a photo of his terminal cancer diagnosis report. I was feeling suffocated, so I stepped outside to get some fresh air. But there, at the door, I saw Stella. She was probably upset because Jasper stood her up. She stormed over and dragged me into the hallway, confronting me. Were you clinging to him all day today? I couldn't help but chuckle. He's my boyfriend. What gives you the right to ask? Stella lifted her shirt slightly, revealing a tattoo along the side of her waist, a floral design. She smirked. He designed this for me. We got them together back then. Now, do I have the right? I clenched my teeth, feeling like my heart plummeted straight to the ground, shattering painfully. Flora, Jasper rejected me, and I was so angry I ran off to another country. But now I'm back. Have you heard that saying? You always long for what you can't have. Besides, he and I belong to the same circle. We grew up together, childhood friends. Can you really say you've beaten me? My gaze lingered on her tattoo, and I remembered a while back when Jasper and I went hiking. It had started raining on our way down, and when he took off his jacket, I noticed a tattoo on his side. I had asked him what it was. He said it was just a string of meaningless letters. Looking back now, how could it have been meaningless? You don't keep something like that on your body for years if it doesn't matter. Stella noticed my stare and smiled. He likes you because you're the sweet, innocent type, someone he's never met before. He pities you, wants to protect you. That's not love. Love is intense. It's hormones, adrenaline, dopamine. I'm wild and free. I'm the perfect match for someone like Jasper, who's equally untamed. Don't you agree? I nodded slightly. All right then, why don't you go tell Jasper to break up with me? She wasn't expecting me to be so calm and indifferent. Stella hesitated for a second. Isn't breaking up with you just a matter of time? I even heard you had a dead ex. Why are you still here ruining other people's lives? You should have died with him. That's the choice you should have made. My fingers clenched into fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms, but I didn't feel any pain. Everyone keeps bringing that up. I don't understand, why? Finn died in the line of duty. To me, he's a hero forever. I wanted to give up on life too, but not solely because of Finn. When I was sick, everyone told me to move forward, embrace a new life. But now that I've moved on and found a normal relationship, everyone's suddenly judging me, blaming me for not dying. Even Jasper, who once stood by me, saving and being saved by each other, wants me to prove my loyalty by dying. It's as if only my death could justify my past relationship, justify him, justify the world. But why? I worked so hard to recover from my illness. Do I not deserve love? Am I not allowed to date, to start over? I met Stella's eyes directly. I think it's pretty sad for someone who's supposedly well-educated to say something so mindless. And whether I've had an ex or not, I still deserve to be loved. But deep down, my chest felt tight, and my heart ached with every beat. I couldn't breathe right, couldn't swallow the lump in my throat. It was unbearable. Truly unbearable. Back in the hospital room, Jasper took my hand. Flora, I've made a bucket list. Will you help me complete it? Looking at his face, the annoyance in my heart reached its peak. I bit down hard on his wrist, tears streaming down my face. Jasper, how could you do this to me? He panicked and pulled me into a tight embrace. "What's wrong, Flora? Don't scare me. I'm so happy to have you with me. That's why I want to do as much as I can with you while I still have the energy, so we don't have any regrets." Still lying to me. After everything we've been through together, and now we're at the point where you need to use death to prove your sincerity. The mix of anger, frustration, despair, and humiliation made it impossible for me to just walk away with dignity. The metallic taste of blood filled my throat, making me want to throw up. I told myself to hold on a bit longer. Then I let go of him, wiped my tears, and took a deep breath before calmly asking, "What's on the list?" Watch a sunrise from a mountain peak, make a pilgrimage to Tibet, take wedding photos. There were about a dozen items. "I remember you used to love racing and extreme sports. Why aren't those on the list?" He froze for a moment, then explained, "They're too dangerous. I don't want you to worry." "You don't want me to worry? Or is it because you've already got someone else to do those things with?" I lowered my gaze. A bucket list feels too cruel to me. If one day you're no longer here, I'll break down just thinking about it. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I shouldn't have been so cruel. I sniffled and shook my head. "I'm willing to do anything for you. Flora, I really don't want to lose you." Yet the same man who didn't want to lose me posted in a group chat. "Once we complete the list, I'll fake my death. Flora's such an emotional person, she'll definitely collapse and give up on life." Meanwhile, I wrote in my journal. My boyfriend asked me to complete his bucket list with him. Looking at the plans, I couldn't stop the tears. God, are you watching what's happening? We set aside half a month to go to that mountain peak and watch the sunrise, to make the pilgrimage to Tibet, circling the mountains and lakes, offering our prayers. We even witnessed a sky burial, overwhelmed by the rawness of life and death. Every time we checked off an item on the list, I posted about it on my account, taking photos along the way. From the first post until now, my account had amassed hundreds of thousands of followers. Many people left comments saying they cried, envied our love. Others sent private messages, wishing my boyfriend a full recovery. Among the flood of emotional comments, one caught my eye. As a medical student, looking at the diagnosis in this post, the prognosis seems grim. How does he still have this much energy? It's practically a medical miracle. I liked the comment and replied, "I hope for a miracle too." Then, I looked at myself in the mirror, dressed in a wedding gown. I looked beautiful. I snapped a picture. Who says you have to marry someone to wear a wedding dress? I can marry myself. Jasper gently hugged me from behind. "Flora, I really, really want to marry you." Looking at his reflection in the mirror, all I felt was a wave of nausea. "Jasper, you're going to get better. And if one day I'm no longer here, what will you do?" His voice was choked with emotion. It seemed like even he was getting carried away with his act. I smiled softly, eyes downcast. "I'll die for love." He was about to say something when his phone rang. I saw Stella's name flash on the screen. Frowning, he explained, "She's been having issues with her family lately and hasn't been in a good mood. Let me take this call first." I stood there, watching myself in the mirror. I was content. I loved myself. Then, I took off the wedding dress. When I came out, Jasper hurried over. "She's run into a bit of trouble. I have to go help her." "What kind of trouble needs you to handle it?" Pressing his lips together, he said, "Her blind date tried to make a move on her." "Oh, so now you're off to play the hero." I grabbed his arm. "Can you not go? You're still sick, and I'm worried. Flora, Stella, and I grew up together. As her older brother, I can't just ignore this. Don't worry, I'll come back once it's taken care of." Then, without looking back, he left. I followed behind him, phone in hand. The so-called blind date trouble was just a ruse. I saw Stella on the bustling street, wrapping her arms around him, laughing brightly. "I tricked you. But you still came. So I'm more important to you, aren't I?" Jasper just affectionately ruffled her hair. Then she grabbed his arm and walked away with him. He didn't forget to send me a message, "Flora, don't wait up. Get some rest." You've seemed off lately, and I'm worried about you. I sighed. I can pretend to be deeply in love too. So, I recorded it on my account. Honestly, I cried the moment I put on the wedding dress. I so wish I could marry him. He's my perfect boy. In the following days, Jasper didn't show up. He told me he went home and not to worry. But Stella somehow got my contact information and sent me a few cryptic messages. I took a deep breath, reassuring myself that it didn't matter. I had known all along. I wasn't expecting anything, so I was already prepared for the moment my lover lost interest. Still, it was a pity. The bright and shining Jasper would eventually fade into time. He helped me through hard times, and I stood by him, defending him against rumors about being an illegitimate child. I protected him, told him he was worthy, that his birth wasn't something he could control. I helped him learn to manage the company, watched him grow. Or rather, giving up his arrogance wasn't for me, but for himself. He gradually gained his father's trust. I had even included him in my life plans. But now I realize there's no such thing as mutual salvation. There's only saving yourself. Only self-rescue. I looked down at my phone, at the message I sent Jasper. It's our 1-year anniversary today. Want to celebrate? He didn't reply. Instead, he showed up at the racetrack with Stella, wearing a baseball cap. I thought for a moment and typed a sentence in my other account. My boyfriend went racing again today. He seems so full of energy, I almost feel like he doesn't actually have cancer. What do you all think? I told myself it would all be over soon. The day before the countdown ended, I drove to the cemetery to visit my grandmother. I used to long for my parents' attention, begging them to love me at the cost of my dignity. But no one ever responded. At least back then, I still had my grandmother and Finn, who loved me. But fate always plays cruel jokes. Both of them, the people who loved me, died in the spring of that same year, just when everything was coming back to life. That's when I fell into depression. As I was about to be swallowed by the sea, I longed for someone to love me. But love, it's such a heavy word. Giving and receiving it strips you down to the bone. So even in parting, it needs a sense of ceremony. I gently stroked my grandmother's picture. Grandma, I'm leaving. A person always needs the courage to face the unknown, don't they? Besides, I already beat depression once. I'm pretty amazing, right? So, I can't make the same mistake again. I'll love myself. I'll live well and embrace a new journey in life. Take care, Grandma. It might be a long, long time before I can visit you again. By sunset, I drove back. On the road, I received a video message from Stella. Sorry, I took over your 1-year anniversary. In the video, they seemed to be celebrating at a bar. When someone wrapped their arm around Stella's waist to kiss her, Jasper appeared out of nowhere. He yanked the guy away, threw a punch, and they got into a fight. In the end, Jasper won, angrily grabbing Stella's arm and dragging her outside. The camera shook for a moment. Then I saw Jasper hold Stella by the waist, lifting her onto the windowsill in the hallway. With a possessive grip on her chin, he kissed her fiercely. Stella opened her eyes and gave the camera a provocative smile. She did it on purpose. A cold sensation slowly spread through my body. But there was no longer the anger or heartbreak I had felt the first time I saw them together. It felt like none of it mattered to me anymore. I casually forwarded the video to Jasper. We need to talk. It seemed he rushed over as soon as he got my message. When Jasper showed up, the lipstick around his mouth hadn't been fully wiped away. I quietly looked away and poured him a cup of tea. Have a seat. He didn't sit but walked over, crouching in front of me, pulling my hand to his face. Flora, let me explain. I was calm, composed. All right, I'm listening. Then I pulled my hand away from his. For a moment, his face went pale. In the next second, he slapped himself hard twice. It's my fault. I got drunk and lost control. Well, at least he wasn't lying. Jasper squeezed out a few tears. I can't deny what happened, but the one I love is you, Flora. I turned to him. Let's break up. What? I said, let's break up. Is that okay? No, Flora, we can't break up. I'm dying, and if you leave me now, I'll die with regrets. Do you like Stella? No, he didn't hesitate. Then why did you kiss her if you don't like her? Jasper shook his head, looking confused. I don't know. Maybe it was possessiveness, or maybe because I don't have much time left. She's liked me for so many years, and I didn't want to leave her with regrets. He grabbed my hand. Flora, I only have a limited time left. Don't leave me now, okay? I looked back into his eyes. Jasper, your cancer isn't a lie, is it? He froze, his gaze shifting, before finally coming to his senses. How could I lie to you? I even bribed so many people, went to the hospital, and saw doctors. I put in so much effort. I wouldn't lie to you. Yes, he knew the more effort he put in, the more believable it would be, the easier it would be to fool me into giving up my life for him. He held on to me tightly. I'll cut ties with Stella. Just don't break up with me. Don't leave. If you go, I won't survive. And besides, is there anyone else in this world who can love you as I do? Could you bear to leave me? That sentence successfully reopened the wounds in my heart, which had almost healed. I spoke softly, Jasper, tomorrow, come with me to the place where we first met. The final part of the plan. Isn't it just rushing toward death? Jasper, I'll give you a grand farewell. I'll die in front of you before you die. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I turned on the livestream as soon as I arrived. Sitting at the edge of the cliff, the sun was already out, casting golden rays through the clouds. Immersed in the beautiful scenery, I heard Jasper's trembling voice behind me. Flora, what are you doing over there? I turned around. Jasper stood not far from me. But Stella was there with him. I smiled lightly and spoke. Jasper, I think my depression has relapsed. It's pretty bad, but I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you. Yesterday, you asked if I could bear to leave you. I can't. I've been through so many times where the people I love died right in front of me. I'm really fragile. Flora, come back. Don't do anything rash, okay? Jasper took a few steps forward, and the panic on his face seemed genuine. Don't come any closer, I warned. He stopped, his eyes already red. I looked at him. Jasper, I asked a doctor about your report. He said this kind of cancer is incurable. Jasper opened his mouth but said nothing. And seeing you kiss someone else, it broke my heart. He immediately denied it. I didn't cheat. You're the only girlfriend I have. I don't love her. Please, believe me. Stella's face went pale. Don't lie. If you didn't love her, why did you kiss her? It was just my possessiveness acting up. I couldn't accept it. Stella was on the verge of tears. Good. I continued, but you hurt both of us. How could you get involved with someone else while claiming to love me? Or did you think you could do whatever you wanted just because you're in the late stages of cancer? To hell with your cancer. Stella suddenly spoke up. Jasper quickly covered her mouth to stop her from saying anything else. Flora, come back. Let me explain, he pleaded. I shook my head. Jasper, do you know what it feels like to be betrayed by the one you love the most? It's like being eaten alive by 1,000 insects, worse than death. I can't be so forgiving as to let this go. So, let's never see each other again. You saved my life once. Jasper, I've returned the favor. Now, I owe you nothing. Before he could put his plan into action, I wanted him to feel guilty for the rest of his life. I wanted to leave a permanent scar between them, one that would prevent them from ever being truly together. Then, I ended the livestream and posted a pre-recorded video. I also left behind a phone full of their flirty, sweet memories. As I jumped into the sea, I knew it was done. My plan was complete. My new life had begun. But why could I still hear Jasper's heart-wrenching screams? Shouldn't he be happy? I finally gave him what he wanted, I gave up my life for him. There's a term in psychology called the desensitization phase. Simply put, if you can't let go of someone, you go to them. You set aside your pride and dignity, and you lay your love bare before them. You watch them reject you, hurt you, say every cruel word, and do every heartless thing. You let them grind down your self-respect and drain away your feelings. In the end, you finally wake up and start over. Everything I did in the past was like cutting into my heart, over and over. But I knew only by cutting away the dead flesh could new skin grow. There's no breaking through without first breaking down. I gave myself back to myself. I had prepared everything for this day long ago. So, soon after, someone came to rescue me. There was no one left in this city for me to hold on to. Before boarding the plane, I checked my phone. Just as I expected, the incident had caused a massive stir. I had arranged for someone to fan the flames early on. People recorded my livestream, and it quickly shot to the top of Douyin's trending list. My account's old posts got more attention too. All those heartbreaking records were like daggers aimed straight at them. Because Jasper had shown his face, netizens soon pieced everything together. I pulled some strings to check. There's no record of Jasper having cancer. I'm so angry, I could kill someone. She stayed by his side, thinking he had cancer, and it turns out he was faking it? Is he insane? An old comment from a med student questioning the cancer diagnosis resurfaced, and many started accusing him of pretending to be sick. After seeing the kissing video and livestream I posted, people began to call Stella disgusting for knowingly being the other woman. Some speculated about me. I don't get why she went live to expose them. Couldn't she just break up? If I were her, I'd be even more ruthless. I'd want revenge. Breaking news, I heard from my parents that this scumbag jumped into the sea. He's barely alive and is in the ICU. Did they find the girl? Not sure if she jumped or disappeared, but I hope she's doing well. I smiled to myself. I was doing just fine. Life is long, and we're bound to face a few insignificant storms. From now on, the wide skies and open seas are mine alone. No one else matters anymore. I settled in a small town in Northern Europe, carrying my sketchpad around to paint every day. I made new friends, living a carefree life. My art has always sold well, and every phase has its own style. Now, my work feels lighter, more vibrant. I don't stay in one city for long, always moving to find new inspiration. It's like I'm a spectator, watching others' lives unfold. I share drinks and stories with strangers. They tell me it's amazing that I overcame depression. I thought about it and said, there was a bright boy once who stayed with me for a while. I'm grateful to him for that time. They hugged me. Of course, you should be thankful. Everyone who enters our life has a purpose. At that moment, it felt like I had finally let go. In my 3rd year abroad, I received a call from my mother. She said my father was gravely ill and wanted to see me one last time. I thought for a moment and asked, do you remember what you did when I knelt in front of you, begging you to come back and see me? My mother was silent on the other end. They had heartlessly let go of my hands and walked away without ever looking back. I continued, I remember years ago, we cut ties. I don't have parents anymore, or did you forget that? Then I hung up the phone. By the 5th year, I started to miss my grandmother. I decided to return home to visit her grave and talk with her for a while. When I came back, I couldn't avoid hearing about Jasper. The incident had blown up years ago. When Jasper woke up, he frantically searched for me, kneeling by the sea, apologizing over and over. Stella, feeling betrayed herself, posted their chats and recordings, proving that he had faked cancer to deceive me. It reignited a public outcry. People started calling him a murderer, saying he used death to test someone's love. A complete lunatic. Netizens dug into his family background, causing his family company's stock to plummet. They even found out he was an illegitimate child who'd taken his place by ousting the first wife's son. As if they'd read too many dramas, netizens flooded the original son's account, urging him to crush this disgraceful person. In the end, Stella and Jasper turned on each other. Their childhood friendship collapsed. Due to the scandal's impact on the company's stock, Jasper never took over the business. His father disowned him, kicking him out of the management team. In both love and work, Jasper had lost everything. He took out his frustration by racing cars, landing himself in the ICU again. The last time he jumped into the sea, his lungs were damaged, leaving him with serious health complications. This time, he ended up paralyzed from the waist down. I heard they also diagnosed him with cancer. Coincidentally, it really was liver cancer this time. I don't know if this counts as karma, but when I heard about it, all I felt was that things had changed. I bought flowers and visited my grandmother's grave. I talked to her about my life, my work, and everything I'd been through these past years. Before I knew it, evening had fallen. As I stood up to leave, I saw Jasper being pushed towards me in a wheelchair. The moment he saw me, his eyes turned red, and his voice cracked with emotion. "Flora, you're alive. You're still alive." In just 5 short years, he had changed so much I barely recognized him. He looked gaunt, weary, and bald, with the marks of chemotherapy all over his body. "I couldn't find you anywhere. I went to your house, but you were gone." I jumped into the sea, but all I felt was the freezing water. His family had money, and I had money too. If either of us wanted to erase my tracks, it wasn't hard. I truly regret it. I never should have tried to test your love with that fake death. I have nightmares every night, seeing you jump right in front of me, and I can't catch you. I feel so guilty, I want to die. Especially when I think of all the places we visited, the things we did together, and how beautiful you looked in your wedding dress, it's unbearable. Every time I see those photos of me with someone else that you left behind, I want to stab myself. How desperate you must have felt back then. See? The boomerang always comes back eventually. I dealt him another heavy blow. "Jasper, I actually knew about your plan all along. I was just playing along with you." For a moment, his face turned deathly pale. I said calmly, "The moment you asked if my depression was faked, you not only showed your lack of trust in me, but you also tarnished the sincerity of the feelings you once had. Once doubt begins, the accusation is already established. What I find most pitiful is that when love exists, you can accept anything. But once the love fades, everything becomes a reason for suspicion. I was wrong, but, you playing along with me, doesn't that mean you still love me? Flora, do we still have a chance?" I laughed, openly sizing him up. "Jasper, take a good look at yourself. Do you think you deserve me now?" His hands were trembling violently. "So, the daily vlogs and the live streams, they were all part of your plan for revenge, weren't they? Flora, in my eyes, you've always been gentle and kind. Does being gentle and kind mean I deserve to be hurt? Jasper, you know my story. You know it was Finn's death, my grandmother's death, and the shattered relationship between my parents that triggered my depression. But the lies that came out of your mouth. I should be glad I saw through you early on." He fell silent, tears streaming down his face. I turned my head away. To think that the deep feelings of youth could end in mutual loathing. In the end, he asked me, "I'm dying soon. Will you forgive me?" I left without looking back. I will never forgive him. But I will let the flowers bloom and the trees grow tall. I will reclaim myself. From this point on, our paths will diverge, never to meet again. On the day my work sold at auction for $50 million, I heard that Jasper had died alone in the hospital. Next to him was a jar of paper stars. On an unfolded piece of paper was a single line, "I so desperately want to go back to that year, when you were you, and I was me." When I looked at you, my eyes were filled with light, reflecting your gentle and bright image. But alas, there's no going back. The end.